Welcome to the 5th meetup of Ministry of Testing in Athens. Here is Nikos Kaldeos, Giorgos Kalfopoulos, and I'm Petros Plakoyannis. Today, we have two basic subjects: modeling your learning testing process from Beren van Daele, the creator of TestSphere, and introducing Selenium 4 from Stewart, the lead of Selenium project. I would like to welcome Simon and Beren here in Athens. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I would like to share with you how this community was organized in Greece. I found out what is Ministry of Testing in Selenium conference in London 3 years ago. Ministry of Testing is a professional learning network and one of the most supportive global software testing communities. After some short talks with the guys there, I found myself longing for making more and more people in Greece aware of this fantastic community. The decision to run the local meetups was taken. Together with Nico and Giorgo, we want to create a community of members that all share a vision to make our little digital corner of a testing world a better place. So, Nikos will remind you of how you can become a member to our community, and Giorgos will host the event. We're waiting for you. Show up, meet new people, and try something brand new. So welcome to all of you. Let's share some knowledge and have some fun.
Hello, I would like to thank all of you for being here to another Ministry of Testing meetup. So far, in less than a year of operations, we have managed to organize 5, this is our 5th successful meetups, and your continuous participation and support give us the strength and inspiration to plan even more exciting meetups. We are officially the fastest growing software community in Greece, and we thank you for that. In the presentation that will be uploaded soon in the Meetup website, you will find all the relevant forms on how to become the next speaker, volunteer, or sponsor of Ministry of Testing Athens. Furthermore, you can always drop us an email at motathorg@gmail.com, and we are looking forward to your ideas, suggestions, and feedback about the meetups. In the next slide, you will find useful links and that include the resources for testing. You can find a lot of stuff there for any topic regarding testing, as well as information about the upcoming Test Bus, which is actually the conference of Ministry of Testing in Brighton, which is scheduled for in April. Okay, now George.
Hi from me, welcome here. Please, everybody that is not sitting, please try and find your seats. There are still empty seats around, so please have a seat if you can. I would like to say a few more words myself that, okay, you see a meetup here, you see our 3 organizers that are here, but you need to understand that this meetup would not be at all possible without the help and without the support of the sponsors. For tonight's special event, we have a rather greater number of sponsors than usual. But as always, we need to thank Ministry of Testing for all the support that they provide, for all the guidance and all the help that they give us on Slack, mostly. We need to say a very, very big thank you to Uni Systems, which is our grand sponsor for the day. They are the ones that are paying for the pizzas afterwards and for coffees that you will have in the break. And let's face it, this is the most important part. We need to eat. Yeah. Okay. Our next thank you go to the sponsors that actually cover the expenses of our speakers today. Trusses and Blue Ground that covered Simon's expenses. Hellenic American Union that is providing on this nice amphitheater and the even more nice Ethereum on top that we will have the party later. For those of you that have not ever been here in this building, you are in for a great surprise. It has a view of the Acropolis. Agile Actors for covering the expenses of Beren. I would I would also like to remind here to all that Beren will be staying here in Athens for a couple of more weeks, and they have an upcoming event and training that has been set up together with Agile Actors next Wednesday, on the 27th. Of course, open bet. You know, we cannot have a party without cocktails, and cocktails are the specialty of OpenBet. On 3 of our previous meetups, I think they have covered our cocktails. And finally, Atos, for actually doing something really important to us specifically, they are covering our dress code. Yeah. Okay, before we start with Beren, I would like to ask Mrs. Eleni from Hellenic American Union. She will tell us a few words about what they do here. Ms. Eleni is the coordinator for continued professional education here at Hellenic American Union. So, welcome here.
Hello, hello everybody. How are you? Welcome. Welcome to the Hellenic American Union. Welcome to this great event. My name is Eleni. I'm responsible for the professional development programs at the Hellenic American Union. I would like to congratulate the organizing committee of the Ministry of Testing Greece for this great initiative, and the sponsors, and the 2 great speakers that we will have today, and I'm sure you will hear many, many interesting things. What we do here at the Hellenic American Union, we offer educational programs, and we also offer a room for a stand for communities such as the Ministry of Testing and other professional communities to gather and exchange ideas and knowledge of what they do. We have a name for it, for this initiative. This is the Learning Hug. So we hug and we foster initiatives such as this. There are many similar events that are going on now in Greece. The Ministry of Testing and other communities that are holding these events is just one of these great initiatives. And we believe that there is room for many, many more because we have a great human resource capacity here in Greece. And these events are a very good opportunity to show what you know and what you can do. And we are proud to host these activities. Similar to the Ministry of Testing, we also host events from ISAC Athens chapter, which are the professionals that they are working on IT security and IT audit. And we also host each month the Startup Tales, where is the community of startuppers that they're exchanging ideas of the technical side of how to run a technical startup. We also host many events on management, on digital marketing, even marketing for fashion and entrepreneurship, new technologies, and many other events. If you would like more information about these events, most of these are free, such as this one. You can visit our website, leave your a few details of your email there, or you can, outside of the desk, there is a form and you can leave information and we can contact you and keep in touch with us. Thank you very much and congratulations again. Have a good time.
Thank you, Eleni. From our part, as Ministry of Testing, we hope that this is the start of a new and very nice collaboration. We also have a number of other things in mind, but let's not stay there today. Now I'm going to ask from Agile Actors, Kostas Sidiropoulos, to come and join us and tell us a few things.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to say that I'm very excited to be here in this great event with these speakers like Simon and Beren. My name is Konstantinos Sidiropoulos, and I'm the software engineer in test capability lead of Agile Actors. Test engineer has evolved over time and it keeps evolving. Nowadays, a test engineer should be aware of all aspects of software engineering, from knowing from how the code is being developed, how it's being built, how it's being deployed, and of course, how it's being tested. So in order someone to be able to keep up pace with the market needs, he needs to have the necessary background in order to be able to understand all of those aspects. Our purpose in Agile Actors is to develop our people in both ways, both hard and soft skills. And how we do that, there are three major pillars: projects, coaching, and of course learning. The projects that we currently have, they exist in several domains like lotteries, banking, financial, insurance, etc. Of course, as I mentioned before, in order someone to be able to develop his or her skills, constant learning is required. So for that reason, we offer a lot of courses in several domains. Especially for the test engineering, we are offering courses for Cucumber and Selenium WebDriver, but we have much more to provide. And of course, as mentioned before, next Wednesday, Beren is giving a course for risk on testing in our premises in Halandri. The third pillar, which is coaching, is someone that is every engineer in Agile Actors from the very first day has a personal coach who is responsible to develop his or her skills and be responsible for all his development. So having said that, I will not stay anymore and I will leave you in the hands of Beren. Thank you very much and enjoy our today's meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Costa, very much. And it's now time to ask Beren. Those of you who don't know Beren, you are losing. Beren is the creator of TestSphere. You're going to have the chance, if you go to this Agile Actors training, to look at firsthand at the cards and the play and everything. I would also like to say a few words, since there are a number of people here, that Beren will be staying in Greece for 2 more weeks here. So he will also be available for in-house training if someone is interested. Go find him afterwards in networking. Okay?
Thank you very much. Wow, this is a wonderful crowd. I'm not sure whether this is a meetup or a conference. This is incredible. So hi, I am Beren van Daele, and I am a big fan of Game of Thrones, especially Khaleesi. And like Khaleesi, I started collecting titles. I am the mother of TestSphere and risk storming. I am the queen of Isle of Testing, breaker of software. We can't say that anymore, right? Breaking, the software is already broken. We just find where it's already defect. I'm also a product owner, not a test consultant anymore. But once in a while I do test and I do find the occasional bug. I'm an organizer of Brute, which is a meetup like this, only about 10 times as small, and part of the Ministry of Testing family. And I am a firm believer that if you can work together, always work together, because stuff is so much better when you do. Not just working together with any kind of team, but finding the diversity within one another. Finding how people are different from you and using that to make sure that you build something better. That can be, for me, if I work on something, I will try to find and work with someone who's different from me. Maybe a woman, maybe a person of color, maybe someone who comes from a completely different country or from a minority group or something. I will try to find a team of people that make sure that I cover my blind spots. And I do believe that firmly in everything that I do. For example, when creating TestSphere, TestSphere is a card deck that gets people thinking and talking about testing. If you want to learn more about this, next week is the workshop. Definitely check out Agile Actors, and we can have a talk later this evening if you are interested. I was also Miss February at some point. This is how much I love my TestSphere cards. I gave you a couple of titles already when I started. So professional semi-nude model is another title I have. Because I was paid. And if you get paid for something, you're professional. That's how it goes. I was paid £1 and I gave it back, but I was paid nonetheless, making me a professional semi-nude model. No discussion. I'm also an exploratory cyclist. What I usually do, so in the beginning of last year, I said goodbye to home, goodbye to a car, goodbye to my previous job, and I started cycling from one place to another, one conference and meetup and business to another, so that I could do these kinds of things and workshops and so on. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Right now it's a bit cold, so I'm not that much on the bike. We're in Athens right now, it's reasonably warm, but if you go to Warsaw, there's like this much snow and not that great to cycle in. So I go around across Europe, this time to Athens, to spread the love for deliberate testing. Catchy, right? And I want to take you on a journey. I want to tell you a story, and I want you to try and imagine really hard what I'm about to say. Try to really get into the story. So, you are sitting down. There's a lot of people around you. There's a lot of creatures around you. They're not really people. You don't recognize anyone. There's only one person that is clearly cut out for you, that you can clearly distinguish. And that's the person in front of you. But it's not a young man. It's an old man. And this old man speaks and says, "Behold my creation. I have created this for you, and I want you to live together on my earth." And it's only then that you see that there's a big globe in front of you. It's green and blue, and it looks really, really nice. And this person goes on. "I want each of you to live on this earth together. But before I send you down, you can choose one skill, one talent, and I shall give it to you." And one of you says, "Yes, I want to go down there. But before you send me, I would like to have shovels for hands, and I want to have a really good sense of smell so that I can dig down and I don't have to live with anyone else here. I will go deep down and be safe." And that's that. And this person turns into a mole and goes down, crawls down in the earth and is safe. Another person says, "If I want to go there, I want to go to that sand over there. But before you send me, give me a very nice thick armor to shade me from the sun because it seems quite warm there." And so he turned into an elephant. He got a very long nose to get deep into the sand to water. He got a very thick skin to shield him from the sun. And there, this mastodon now lives in the wastes. Other people spoke up. "I want to have a rope for a tail." Or, "I want to have a really nice color so I can fly and make sure people don't want to eat me because I look toxic." And everything happened. People turned into snakes, into kangaroos, into monkeys, and they went down to the earth. Everyone went down. Everyone chose a talent, except one person. That's you. You didn't know. When this old man comes to you and says, "Well, human, what shall it be? What's your talent? What's your skill?" You don't know. You don't have an answer. All these other people, all these other creatures had a very good answer, and we wish that you could give that same answer, but you just can't. This old man says, okay, human, you will not get a talent, you will not get a skill, you will get the ability to learn. You will learn, you will be able to create any of these tools. You want a shovel, you will build a shovel. You want a rope, you will build a rope. You want to make sure that you're shaded from the sun, you will create that because you can learn. And that's our biggest talent that we have, our skill, our ability, that is to learn. Because a wise man once said that testing is learning plus evaluation. To be very, very short about that. So it makes sense that we research learning to learn more about testing. And we've been learning for a very long time. We're here in Greece, and about 3,000 years ago, or somewhere along those lines, I don't know the exact date, people were researching learning, the Socrates method, these kind of things. That's when we've been doing that. So it makes sense to start researching that, to learn about testing, how we can be better at it. So I'm going to introduce you to 4 very old men. The first one is Piaget. Piaget is a researcher, an educational researcher, and his theory goes that learning is at the center of the human experience. We always learn, we never stop. As soon as we are on the floor crawling like babies, we are touching blocks, we are listening to music, we are listening to the voices of our parents, and we learn. We don't really know what to do with it. We don't have any models or techniques to do something with it, but we learn. And as we grow older, we iterate on that. So we are playing around with blocks. We are imitating people when we grow older. We learn to read books. We look at abstract text, and we can pull out something that will make us a better human or make us do something better. We can practice that. And when we become adolescents, we try cigarettes or cocktails or pizzas and so on, and we try things out that we learned as we were growing up. People told us, don't touch cigarettes, don't eat this, you have to do a lot of sports, that kind of stuff. And we kind of test the boundaries. Is that true? So I think at a certain point we all become born testers. The second wise old man is Lewin. I was going to say the wrong word. Lewin. And Lewin turned it around. So we have Piaget saying learning at the center of the human experience. Lewin says experience at the center of human learning. And Lewin identified a circular movement in each of our learning. There's 4 steps that we all go through. First we experience, or we start somewhere else. It doesn't matter where you start. But let's start with our experience. Something happens. Imagine being the first person on Earth, seeing lightning hit a tree. The tree catches fire, and you're like, oof, that's pretty dangerous. But then something starts to go inside your mind. You're like, that's pretty dangerous. That's pretty powerful. But what if I could use that? What if I could become master of fire? And you start observing this fire, and you see that it consumes other pieces of life. You see that it consumes leaves and branches and grass. And you think, maybe this fire feeds off of it. It lives through other life. So I can control it that way. Those are your abstract conceptualizations that you draw. You see something and you learn. Something happens within your brain. And what does a normal human being, past their adolescents, do? They test it. We try to get out fire, and we see whether we can master it, whether we can use this to become powerful. And from that moment on, we have gone through so much learning and iterations. We have steam trains there, we have guns, we have the whole electric network comes through all these iterations of learnings from mastering fire. It's incredible how fast that goes, or considering. Once you have purpose and you use that learning, that's where humans are best at, and that's what we've been doing for so long. So if we think about testing being learning plus evaluation, we need to have purpose. We are constantly learning more about our application. We're constantly better at finding bugs within it, but we need to have purpose. The purpose that we see is making sure that our project is successful and that we figure out that these risks that we identify don't happen. The fourth old man is Kolb. And Kolb said that yes, there is this circular movement. There are 4 steps into our learning, but they are more granular. They are learning styles. Every person goes through those 4 steps, but we have a certain preference for other steps. I personally started off as someone who is very active and wants things to be concrete. In my professional career, I've moved a bit, and throughout my talk, I hope you also think with me and maybe figure out in which branch you have a preference. So, if you have a look at these 4 styles, we have the activist. So this person, for example, we let this person test a vacuum cleaner. What's the first thing that this person will do? They will get the vacuum cleaner out of the box, put the cord in, and start vacuuming and seeing whether it can go under the bed, or can see if we can clean out the shelves, or just misuse it or use it any way possible. They're very active. They immediately start doing stuff and observing and getting experience with the product. An observer will be looking at the vacuum cleaner first, see that there's a compartment that actually has the engine and sucks the dust, then the nozzle, then the weirdly shaped thing that you put on the floor, your cords, figure out which buttons are there and what they might do when you push them. That's what an observer does. A theorist will just put the vacuum cleaner away, get the manual out, and say, okay, apparently it sucks dust. The pragmatist will put the vacuum cleaner away, will put the manual away, and start talking to the salesperson. Figure out what the vacuum cleaner does by talking to people. 4 different styles of testing, 4 different styles of learning, but each will get a different result. Or they might come to the same result in a different way. I'm not going to say which one is better. I don't believe there's one that's better. I just believe there are differences, and that together they will damn well know sure how that vacuum cleaner works. I've worked with a couple of people like this, and these are their traits. So I've worked with Tim. Tim was pretty much an activist. He came right off the school benches, and people told him, oh yeah, you've studied economics, you can be a tester. Happens very often. I personally did not study to be a tester. I don't believe that most of us studied to become testers, and we just like, oh, does that exist? Sure, I'll do it. Perfect. So Tim was the same, and he started testing on something without even knowing what he was doing. But he was really good at it. He found bug after bug after bug. And I really liked him as that because he didn't find the really deep bugs or the really business critical ones, but give the application an hour or two to Tim, and you would be certain to find like 30 reasonably important issues. And you could just cut away from them and like, okay, we're not going to fix this, we're not going to fix that. But you get a whole lot of feedback just because Tim, he started playing, he started exploring, and he started finding. Then I worked together with Geert. And Geert is someone who is, well, he tested really, really well, but where he really excelled was a whiteboard. You gave him a whiteboard and some crayons or stifts, and he would just map out the complete application. He would like make architecture on there and draw lines and then say, hey, come here, look at this with me. What, have we tested it here? Have we tested it there? What happens if we do this? Without even touching the application, he was able to find bugs within the model of the application. He didn't touch it. He learned a bit. He talked to people. He got enough information and started drawing, and that's how he found issues. Sorry. I still have a bit of last week's illness in me. Then we had Marina. And Marina didn't find that many bugs. She was a very timid lady, sat at her desk, did a lot of stuff, but I didn't. So I was the test lead there, and I didn't see much coming out of the work of Marina. And I was starting to get worried until I realized that she doesn't log as many bugs as Tim, but man, if she did log a bug, it was bad. It was really bad. She was going through the requirements, going through everything that she could find, going really deep into the application and the documents, and she would find those really nasty business logic errors that we all thought, yeah, this could possibly end with the company ending up in court. So Marina was really valuable, although you wouldn't see it in the first glance. And then there's me. As I became a tester, more and more of a tester, I moved from the active part to more of a debating part. I think that's also because I was more, I worked as a tester, but as a test consultant. So I had to do a lot of talking, I had to do a lot of convincing and changing. And I think that changed me a bit into the purple person. So I start on a project and I start talking to people. And I think I ask them, why are you doing it that way? Why are you not doing it this way? What if we would do this? And just by talking to people and hey, this person says A while the other person says B, what up? Get these two people talking, clear out the issues, and then start building, or then start testing. So very different ways of testing, very different ways of entering a project and adding value, but again, I wouldn't know which one is better. This is what we do as testers. These are the typical things that we do. We handle, touch, we feel, we experience in our application as an activist. As an observer, we start modeling, scheming, mind mapping, sense making. As a theorist, conceptualizing, generalizing, connecting. We try to make an abstract rule out of the things that we see, out of the evidence that we see. Or, as a pragmatist, we talk about it, we question, we test, we figure out if there's issues or if there's any way that it disconnects. So what I'm trying to do next, this is quite experimentational for me at least. So these, for me, I read a couple of books. I researched the 4 different old men, let's say, of the beginning. They come up with learning styles, with learning theories, and I tried to map them to testing. That's what I just did. What I want to do now is figure out whether we all have certain learning styles that we know, that's been researched, that's been proven, or proven to some degree. Some people don't necessarily, are not necessarily as convinced as I am, but we learn differently. I am thinking that we also test differently. I'm pretty convinced about that. What I'm trying to do now is to figure out that if our test cycle, if our processes that we use influences the way that we work together, and if we are losing something there. So if we look at a typical testing cycle as we see within the work of James Bach and Michael Bolton, for example, they start making sense, starting exploring. They compare against their mission status. They focus on what needs to be doing. They do a burst of testing, they report, they report, they report. So you can see this, I just pulled this out of their work. It is not completely mapped to what we saw with Lewin, but it's very similar. There are 4 steps that we do to learn and to test. One of the ways that we test, this is from Jonathan Bach, the brother of James Bach. He's a big fan of session-based testing, where we explore without a given script, but we note down like scientists what we see and what we find. Is there an issue? Is there a new way to test? Is there a new test idea? So session-based testing focuses on the exploration part. They take notes as they go along, then they generate new test ideas. They write them down in new charters. So charter is something that is a mission for your session. So if they see that they need to invest more time there, they would create new charters. And then they start testing, again, with these new insights to further strengthen the way that they test in their exploration. So if you say that as a team, you are testing in a session-based testing way, this is generally what you do. And be mindful that you put an emphasis on exploring. The next one emphasizes the modeling. So this is what Geert would be really like. He would really like working in this kind of team. So this is more of an observation-driven testing. Imagine, and this is a trend that we see more and more, where we the quality aspect of observability becomes really important. It's what grew out of the DevOps movement a bit, if I can make those statements. So observability is to see what's happening, usually in production, through monitoring, to analyzing, through alerts that you have, and you see what you can learn from that, and you try to come up with new theories. You see, for example, that there's a bottleneck somewhere, and you want to test that out. You create a theory that this might be a bottleneck, and we might actually make this into a problem. So let's test this. And then you start exploring again, because you need to do exploration to make sure you can do observations. So again, a circle. Emphasis, on modeling. The third one, this is something that we usually do, I think, years ago, where we have a strong emphasis on test cases. This is what you would see in a waterfall project more than anything else, is you get a functional analysis, you read through it, you write your test cases, you put them somewhere in your test case management software. You question your requirements, hopefully, you talk to people. You start testing your test cases or your decision tables or whatever way you want to model your inputs and your outputs. So you test them. From checking all these things, you can't help but seeing more. We're very bad at just keeping to a script as humans. So we immediately explore as well. While we are doing scripts, we see something that's not in the script, but we can't help but human beings but see these things. So from there, we have to remodel the script because we saw an issue, we talked to people, we learned, we have to reiterate. Marina would be really good at this. And she would find really interesting bugs there. And then this is what I really like doing, and this is focus on the risks. I would talk to people, I would do a risk storming session, figure out, hey, what's important? I'm not gonna just test anything. I want to test the things that are important. I want to test the risks that will impact the stuff that's important. Because why the hell otherwise are you paying me? So I want to figure out why I'm testing first, then explore in function of those risks, model my information so that it makes sense to me, and then I will report and adjust my own worldview and say, okay, we have these risks, these are covered, but we've encountered a couple of new ideas that might be risks. So risk-oriented testing. Now, this for me is an experiment, right? I gave these a couple of names, I gave these processes, they made a lot of sense to me. But the most important message behind it, and I hope that you saw that while you were going on the journey with me, is if you learn differently and you test differently, and everyone around you also tests and learns differently, but we have one process, whether that's session-based management, whether that's test cases, writing test cases and focusing on the requirements, or whether that's risk-based testing, or whatever you want to use, whatever names you use, but you're just focusing on one thing, then you're empathizing, or you are strengthening 1/4 of the people in your team, and 3/4 of the people in your team, statistically speaking, are not empowered by your process. They are not using that. You are not using the diversity of your team to find the important things. So what I'm saying, what I would really like you to get out of this is be mindful of the team around you, of the people around you, how they learn, how they test, and how your processes or your procedures or the way of working influences those people either for better or for worse. And change accordingly. Make sure everyone gets to do the best that they can do. And that's mostly the environment that you create as colleagues. Then I would really like to thank some people. And thank you for listening to me.
Any questions? Anyone? We are okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Beren. I hope you all got the message. This is a people skills, not an IT thing, not a technical thing. You need to work with people to make success. Okay, notice that we are now having a break again, courtesy of Uni Systems. There are drinks outside, coffee, juices, cake. Be aware that we will start a countdown again when it's time to be back, and we will call you back, okay? Go on.
Welcome back for the second part of today's meetup. We will have a few speeches from sponsors, and then we move with Simon Stewart presentation. Now I would like to invite on stage Angelos Moschovinos, the country manager of Trasis Greece. Trasis is a big contributor of Ministry of Testing, enthusiastic supporter, and is also contributing to other major IT communities in Athens. Angelos?
Hello everyone, I'm Angelos. Nice to be here. You are doing a very good job, and we are happy to support you. You are constantly interesting with your events, and ourselves and definitely other companies will keep supporting you in your initiatives. What I would like to say about us quickly is that we are a Greek-established Belgian entity in Greece the last 15 years. Oops, it went fast. Actively in applications, in cloud offering, infrastructure, and something you have done. Okay. Okay. And IT consulting. The interesting part of our job is that we are end-to-end service offering. Can we see the posting? Something? Yeah. Okay. Hope it poses now. Okay. Our interesting part. Sorry for this. Our interesting part of our job in trusses. Have you put something in auto or something? Yeah. Έχει auto, μωρέ. Κάτσε. Ας πάμε τα βελάκια μας, καλύτερα. Όχι. Sorry for this. I should have used my computer. Εδώ είμαστε. Okay. Our interesting part of our job, I was saying, is that we are end-to-end service offering, meaning that we start our job from consulting our customers what they want, doing the application development, and then going to cloud offering or hosting as well. However, I will not go into details of what we do. You can talk to us later or visit our website. What we have in our DNA since the beginning, the last 15 years, is that we seriously believe on continuous evolution of competences. All these years, we have established internally good community of practices covering various streams. We participate in conferences, we train our people and certify them, but most importantly, we are extrovert in the community, sponsoring, organizing, being present in many meetups, events, conferences. And we believe that knowledge sharing is an essential part for our evolution. All of us in the IT domain, we know that our job is very demanding. What we do last year doesn't exist next year, so we have to constantly educate ourselves. Okay, this is a quick landscape of the tools and technology we are handling today, and the last box is around testing. Obviously, all this effort to keep up updated needs a lot of effort of yourself and the company. And that's why we believe that such events of knowledge sharing among the community are very important. That's about us. I think it's time for Simon to do the interesting presentation.
Thank you, Agile. Before Simon, we would like to invite on stage Stratos Pavlakis from Blue Ground, a company that is positively transforming the experience of big city living.
Are we using the bad slides? Hello, everyone. Am I the only person standing between you and Simon's talk? And then cocktails? Okay, feels uncomfortable. Anyway, I'm here to talk to you about Blue Ground, but before I do that, this is a great event. Thank you for having us. There's only one problem, though. I think that you set a new record for attendance on a meetup. You know, organizing the JavaScript meetup here, and you know, we're in a bit of competition. So do you know, Simon? Do you know JavaScript? We may need you. Okay, Blue Ground. Cut to the chase. The business model is dead simple here. So, big shortage of furniture apartments. If you have been looking for an apartment in Athens, you'll see it's difficult to find a good one. So, low quality furniture, landlords want paperwork and binding contracts. So, and the booking process is as worst as it gets. It's offline, and after you get in, you don't have any support. And we're living, in 2019 now. We expect more than that. That's what Blue Ground does. We offer smart furnished apartments, turnkey living solutions, as we call them. And we do that through a great operations team and software. So we have lots of software and need to create more software, everything software. So booking website, channel management for syndicating our properties across channels across the world, and a mobile app, which looks shitty now, but we're remaking it, and an operations and management dispatch system. We're well funded, and finally, the trick is that we believe in our people and we have good mentors. So since I'm in a room full of test engineers, I want to say, and a few recruiters, can you spot the recruiters among you? I have to say that the way we deal with test engineering is that we think that everybody's an engineer, you know, part of the team, cross-functional teams, and everyone writes their tests. So we don't just throw a bunch of tests to, you know, the developers throw a bunch of code to the test engineers to test. Everybody writes test software, like from unit tests to integration tests to end-to-end tests. And the test engineering is more like an horizontal chapter that's consulting how tests should be written and, you know, building the infrastructure along with the DevOps teams. If that sounds interesting, please apply. We have lots of positions open. Thank you very much for having me. Simon, to you. Thank you.
Okay, Simon Stewart needs no introduction, but I will give it anyway. Simon is the lead of Selenium project, the creator of WebDriver. He worked at ThoughtWorks, at Google, at Facebook, at Deliveroo. We are very happy to have you here. Simon, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. In the true style of all good tech presentations, it's going to begin with 5 minutes of me setting up my laptop. Will it work? Probably. There it is. That was nerve-wracking. I mean, they say Macs are things that just work. I don't know whether they mean it works simply or it barely works at all. Hi, I'm Simon Stewart. Thank you very much for that introduction. I am blown away by how many people there are here today. When they said, would you mind speaking at a meetup? I thought there'd be like 15 people in a back room somewhere, and there's hundreds of you. Thank you ever so much for being here. I really appreciate you giving up your time to be here. And thank you to everyone who helped organize this trip. It's been amazing, and it's great to see you all here. And I think tonight it's been really well organized, hasn't it? Yep, okay, yep, good. So Selenium 4, TLDR, too long, didn't read, should be TLDL, I guess. Too long, didn't listen. We're going to cover these things. Why are we bumping the major version number from 3 to 4? We're going to talk about stable user-facing APIs, new tricks that Selenium has. There's going to be 3-letter acronyms that some of you may or may not be familiar with. All sorts of exciting things like that. And then finally, we're going to talk about the new modernized Selenium grid. So hopefully there'll be a bit in here for everyone, but there may be a bit in here that will leave you like, I'm not interested in this. How many of you do software development for your day job? Like you hack code. I don't care whether you do it writing tests or whether you do it writing production software. And how many of you never touch an IDE? Like manual testers or doing exciting things like that? Okay, good. So this should be fine. Famous last words. So Selenium has a bit of a sort of John Malkovich problem. Have you ever seen the film Being John Malkovich? there's a moment where they go into his head and everyone says, Malkovich, 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 Malkovich. I'm afraid we have that problem with Selenium. Everything is called Selenium. There's Selenium IDE, Selenium driver, Selenium grid. Your end-to-end tests are probably called Selenium tests. It's all very confusing. But really, you can think of Selenium as a brand name, and underneath that brand, there are three major products. And they are Selenium IDE, Selenium WebDriver, and Selenium Grid. The IDE is a record playback tool. That's the thing that everyone uses to click around and they record a test and they can play it back. WebDriver, obviously the APIs that you are all using. You are all using WebDriver, right? You're not using Selenium RC. Occasionally, yes, there's always somebody who goes like, although this API went out with the dinosaurs, we are still using it. And that's fine because we have a slavish adherence to backward compatibility. One of the nice things is you can take your Selenium 1 test that you wrote in 2006 and you can spin it up against the very latest version of Selenium Grid and it will work. I mean, the test will work. Whether it passes is a different thing entirely. So, first question. I mean, Selenium 3 came out only a few years ago. Why are we bumping the major version number? First answer is nothing to do with semantic versioning. Does anyone practice semantic versioning? No, it's because it's a lie. I have yet to meet anyone who goes like, yes, I do semantic versioning. And it's like, do you get it right all the time? And they go, no, I do not. We have 3 dotted numbers because when I started working on WebDriver 2006, that's how you named things, and we just carried on doing it. That's also why the version number at the moment are the digits of pi. It's because they left me alone to name things, and I went ahead and named things. So we're not bumping the major version number for semantic versioning reasons. The real reason we're doing it is because we're adopting the W3C WebDriver protocol wholeheartedly. So I don't know if you know the history of the project. A long, long time ago, we started writing it, and we realized that we needed to be able to run tests on a different machine from where, the browser needed to be on a different machine from where the test was. So we came up with the wire protocol, and it was like, well, we could use XML, because that was trendy at the time. Do you remember when XML was trendy? Yes. It was never really trendy, but it was like super hot, right? Everyone was like, you know what I want to do? What? I want to rewrite everything in XML. Are you sure? Oh, I don't like my eyes. I like angle brackets. Now, I guess YAML would be the equivalent now, right? How are you doing? Well, I'm just rewriting my entire configuration in YAML. So we adopted JSON as the sort of format, and then HTTP, and that was great because every language has parsers for HTTP and JSON, and it was wonderful. Except we sort of grew the wire protocol organically, I think is the politest way of describing it. We hacked shit in when we needed it, is the actual story. And then we spent 6 years with the W3C going through this sort of mishmash of a protocol and cleaning up the rough edges and making it nicer. And we ended up with the W3C WebDriver standard. And if you download Selenium 3.141.59, which hopefully will be the last 3 release, because otherwise it's going to get silly, you have an implementation of WebDriver that supports both the JSON wire protocol, the original protocol, and the W3C one. So when we embrace the W3C protocol wholeheartedly, what will it mean for you? Nothing. Hopefully. It should be a big fat 0. It should mean, hey, look, I don't care what protocol it uses. It could use I don't know, carrier pigeons or something. As long as your tests pass, right? That's the main thing. Who does need to care? People like these, people who offer Selenium as a service. Source Labs, Testing Bot, Browser Stack, whichever one that one is, because I forget the name right now, because I'm rubbish like that. They need to care about the protocol versions. Generally, you, as users, don't need to care at all. Why shouldn't you care at all? Because one of the things we're doing is we're promising to have stable user-facing APIs. So when you get, if you're a Java user, who uses Java? I mean, I do. .NET? JavaScript? Oh. Did you move from Ruby to get onto JavaScript? Just checking. Stable user-facing APIs, right? So when you do the upgrade, for whichever language it is, you upgrade the library from version 3.14159 to whatever it is you're going to be using, and it should just run, right? I mean, I say it should just be a drop-in replacement. It should be zero effort. It should be incredibly simple. That's a bit of a lie. As with all things, there are caveats. The major one is if you're using a method or an API or a class that is marked as deprecated or obsolete, don't rely on it being there. It's probably going to go away. In the Java world, people seem to really like the subclasses of by. By with CSS selector or by with XPath or whatever, right? Rather than just using the top-level by class, they use a super specific one. Those are going away. We're going to hide them from you. So don't do that. But just compile your code, and if you get marked deprecation warnings as failures rather than warnings, and clean those up, you'll be all set for Selenium 4. It's going to be good. Legacy wire protocol support. The other big thing that's happening, you know, we need the legacy wire protocol. It's going to be around for a long, long time. I look at the download stats occasionally for Selenium. Selenium 2.53, which was the last Selenium 2 release, is about in the top 3 or 4 every month. Like, people are still using the antiquated version of the product. And that's fine, because we have this sort of slavish adherence to backward compatibility. But what will happen is that .NET, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, of the official language bindings, they are going to rip out the support for the old wire protocol, and it will just live in the Java world. And will live in the Java world with additional hoops you need to jump through. You need to include an additional jar in order to get that into your project. But what you will be able to do is spin up an instance of the Selenium server, and that will have support for the old wire protocol, and that will do what we call protocol translation. So the two look kind of basically the same. We call them dialects because they're basically the same language, but they're slight differences. And the Java server knows how to convert from one to the other. So if you want to continue using Selenium 2 clients with the new Selenium 3.4 grid, then you can continue to do that, but you need to interpose the Java Selenium server in the way. I mean, it just makes sense, right? Basically, we're moving forward and we're stripping out the old stuff, but we're keeping the old stuff around because people love that. They're still using RC. Does any of that matter? Probably not. Most people in this room are probably using a subset of the functionality that we provide in Selenium, and that subset is going to be the pretty well-known stable core. You probably haven't got deprecated interfaces that you're using. You're probably going to be fine. Like, genuinely, I think it's going to be almost a non-issue for almost everyone. People will be terrified, because whenever you bump a major version number, people sort of believe the entire world is going to collapse and fall down, and they're never going to recover. And then they do it, and they go, oh, that wasn't so bad. We saved the real breaking changes for like a minor version change. It's going to be hilarious. But the 3 to 4 upgrade probably will just be a no-op for almost everyone, he says confidently. And one of the reasons why it probably doesn't matter is that all the third-party drivers, Chrome driver accepted, but Gecko driver, IE driver, Edge driver, or I believe it's called Microsoft WebDriver actually, they all use the W3C protocol already, which is why version 3 speaks both languages. The only third-party WebDriver implementation out there that doesn't use the W3C protocol yet is the Chrome driver, and that's coming in the next release. The interesting thing with Selenium is we always say we're going to release it by a certain date. For a long time, Selenium 3 was coming by Christmas. We never said the year that Christmas was going to be in, and we did release it by a Christmas. We were going to release Selenium 4 by Chinese New Year. It'll be a Chinese New Year. It turns out there's a lot of work to be done, and you will see why. And how can you have this sort of heterogeneous network where bits of it speak the JSON wire protocol, the original one, and bits of it speak the W3C version? It's because we spent... W3C meetings are boring, right? It's 2 days sitting in a room with pedantic nerds arguing about like the tiny details. There's not normally sunshine or sunlight. There is, however, bad coffee and stale pastry. I make it sound more glamorous than it really is. But we spent a long time trying to figure out like how would we support a world where you don't really know what's on either side of the wire. And so we have a thing called the protocol handshake. If you open up the Java source code for Selenium, you will find a class called protocol handshake. And it's called that because it actually implements a protocol handshake. What we do is we don't know when you start a session which variant of the wire protocol the remote end speaks, the server speaks. So what we do is we prepare a payload that contains something that is valid for the W3C protocol and one that's valid for the JSON wire protocol. We then push that across the wire, and a server can look at it. A server might be Gecko driver or whatever it is, and it picks out the variant that it wants to use. So if you're using Chrome driver as it is now, it isn't aware of the W3C protocol. So what it does is it just pulls out the JSON wire protocol and it responds with a message that's shaped in exactly the same way as the JSON wire protocol is. The Gecko driver, however, speaks the W3C one. It completely ignores the payload that we've sent for the JSON wire protocol, and it goes, aha, and it replies with a response that's shaped exactly like the W3C one, because it is the W3C one. There's one field different, and we check for the presence of that field, and that's how we can tell. But what that means is that you can connect any Selenium client to any Selenium server, and because of the magic of the handshake, that they will just work. In the new world, where everything speaks the W3C protocol, that handshake will be significantly less important and probably won't be necessary at all, because you can just assume that everyone speaks Esperanto, the W3C protocol. That was boring, wasn't it? I mean, I find it endlessly fascinating, but then, like, I'm tasked with implementing it. New tricks. There are some nice new features coming. It's not just technical, boring stuff that happens on the back end. There's some new shiny to make it exciting. And part of that new shiny comes about because in the 12 years that Selenium has been in existence, the world has moved forward. They say a week is a long time in politics. A day is a long time in software. There are two really popular, or tools that are becoming more popular these days. Thank you very much. Two tools that are becoming really popular. The first one is Puppeteer, which is released by the Chrome DevTools team and allows you to control Chrome. And then there's Cypress, which is a commercial tool that is people quite like. Have any of you heard of either of those? Yeah. Are some of you like going, yeah, I want to use that? Because for some reason I want to do all my testing in only Chrome. Bugger the rest of the world. So a gross oversimplification of the new state of the world follows. I realize I'm missing out nuance, I realize I'm going to be cutting corners, and I realize that I'm going to be arguing against a straw man argument, something that doesn't really exist. However, it helps frame the conversation. So, what do Puppeteer and Cypress offer that Selenium doesn't at the moment? Well, the first thing is a nice record and playback experience. Like Cypress is super slick at this, right? You go like click, 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 click. Fortunately, we have the new Selenium IDE. I will be talking more about it later. But the record playback experience is getting better. The playback looks a little bit like this. This is a demo that Thomas from the Applitools put together. He's running a couple of tests using the new Selenium IDE. He recorded them earlier. He's testing against the internet, which is Dave Hefner's really good example website of like things you might find on the internet. If you ever want to learn how to do testing, it's a really good place to start. Dun, da, 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 da. There's nothing worse. Like, it demos really well watching tests, but it is boring. Chrome is being controlled by automated software. The internet is loading. Dun, da, da, da. There we go. It's doing it. So it's got a nice UI on the console. There's also a nice UI in the web as well. You don't need to just watch that. And test pass, which is nice. The other nice thing that Puppeteer and Cypress both allow you to do is you can hook into the internals of the browser. So you can listen out for events that are happening. So quite often you'll see in their marketing, they go like, super stable tests that run incredibly fast. No need to ever write a thing to wait for anything to happen. We know exactly what's going on. It's because they're hooked into the internals of Chrome. And they do that using a protocol called the Chrome debugging protocol, which is what the developer tools use in order to communicate effectively. I don't know. I've looked at the Chrome debugging protocol. It's sinfully ugly. It's like it fell out of the ugly tree and hit every ugly branch on its ugly way down, and then sits there looking a bit ugly and upset with itself. I don't like it one bit. But, dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Do that. And then, where's my mouse cursor? I've lost my mouse cursor. It's called a cursor for a reason, right? Presentation mode. Hey! So here, can you see that at the back? There are people nodding. That's great. You see there I found a cable. Java test, even if you don't program in Java, I hope it's sufficiently legible. One of the things we try is to have an API that is simple to consume. So we create a new Chrome driver. And I'm still fiddling with this bit, but DevTools. We create a new DevTools instance. And then what we do is we say to the tools, whenever there's a logging event on the console domain, so whenever somebody does console.log, let us know. Set this entry on this reference here. Could have done systemout.println for system out debugging, things like that. We then execute a piece of JavaScript that logs the classic hello world message. You will notice hello world is correctly punctuated, has a comma, capital letter because it's the world's name, and an exclamation mark. The number of hello world programs I find that are buggy is frankly upsetting. We then wait until that's been set, and then we quit the driver. Would you like me to run that? Because, I mean, there's nothing like coming up on stage with bleeding edge code and demoing it. Okay, wish me luck. Dink, 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 dink. Where's my thing? All right, right click, big letters. Should be able, yep. So we see things happening, only local connections are allowed. There was Chrome, starting and stopping, because Selenium is super fast, right? And you will see we have a green bar, and I'll just lift this up. You can see as well that we have debug output from the debugging from the console, and part of that will be the message that says the text was "Hello World." I promise you it's in here. It's quite hard to read. Message, source, level, log, text. There it is. Woo! Hello World, correctly punctuated. So what we're doing here is we're hooking into the exact same hooks that Cypress and Puppeteer are using, but we're exposing them in a really friendly way that means you don't need to pick up an ugly API, and you can start doing interesting things, which is super nice, right? Like, that's how we evolve software. We take a look at what everyone else is doing and go, that's nice, but I can do it nicer, if nicer is a proper word. Right. Use a separate display. There you go. So that is coming in Selenium 4. It'll be in the alphas. It's going to be a lot of fun to play with. Feedback would be really appreciated when we finally ship that. Also, do you find it easy to find elements on a page? Like I implementation, who uses XPaths that are like 8 lines long? Or worse, an auto-generated XPath because you've got some sort of weird language that you've developed, right? There are nods in the room and people looking unhappy. The provided by implementations are pretty limited, and the reason for that is that Selenium WebDriver was originally designed as a sort of framework to allow you to bolt together the things you wanted to do interesting things. And everyone just took the framework and started using it, which is great, but they didn't ever do like new custom by implementations. The number of those I've seen is minimal. So we're thinking of having friendly locators. Friendly locators were invented, the first time I heard about them was in a product called Sahi, which was written by a chap called Narayan, who is in India. Sahi is super. It was very clever. It was one of the early competitors to Selenium RC. And they had some really nice locators. Those locators were things like near, above, below, left of, right of, contains. Like simple expressive things that read far more like English than a CSS expression, or worse, God forbid, an XPath expression. For a long time, I didn't implement friendly locators because Narayan and I had met up, we'd had a long chat, we'd had a few beers together, and he said, the thing that sets Sahi apart are these locators, please don't implement them. And it was like, okay, that's fine, I've already got too much code to write, it's fine. Somebody else will come along and implement them because they're really obvious. They're not really obvious, are they? They are, in fact, an incredibly good idea. The problem is that lots of the testing tools now offer locators like this. And so it makes sense for Selenium to also offer locators that are like this. So we are going to be implementing these, rolling them out, and providing a way to allow you to do a slightly richer language for finding elements that is based more closely on how you perceive the page and how you look at it. Of course, it'll be calling down to JavaScript underneath the covers. So although it'll be a little closer to reading English, it will still be a funky implementation. Never, ever look at how it's made. Just use it. It's like sausages. They're delicious. Never go to a sausage factory. Do we need more? Do we need to do things with our locators that I haven't thought about, that aren't friendly locators? Possibly, probably, almost definitely. Chaining them seems to be something that people find really difficult. So you want to find an element which is a checkbox, but it's underneath this one, and it's to the left of that one, and every second Tuesday it appears on the page, or whatever it is, right? You want to be able to express locators that are a bit more sophisticated than just, here's a single thing. I don't know. Do you want to do that? Could you care? If we didn't do it, would it matter? I don't use Selenium anymore. That's what they're saying. So, Selenium IDE, brand new logo. It's been revivified, meaning brought back to life. What happened was it used to be hooking into Firefox in one very particular way, and Mozilla went, the power of our community is our extraordinary collection of extensions. What can we do to support that? So they completely changed how you implement extensions, which was a bit of a problem for us because we didn't have anyone working on JavaScript. Do you know how many people the Selenium project has working on JavaScript? It's close to zero. It's like half a person. Jason Labour occasionally goes, well, hang on a second, and then he's a genius, right? So even half a Jason is like worth 8 other people, but it's only half a Jason. Really easy way to contribute to the project. Just a hint. So this happened, and then a group called SideX took the original Selenium IDE and they made it work as a web extension. When we were trying to figure out, like, how are we going to bring back Selenium IDE, we had a chat with them, and a company called Applitools came forward and they went, we will take this and we will push it forward and we will put engineering effort behind improving Selenium IDE. If you work for a company and your company has any Slack whatsoever, not Slack the crappy talk thing, chat app that eats all your CPU and RAM and time and attention, basically it ruins your life. Slack as in capacity to do stuff. If your company has that and it uses open source, then contributing back to open source is a really nice thing to do. Quite often you get these tools for free, which is nice, but people are also working on them for free. And giving something back is a nice thing to do occasionally. I mean, you don't have to, but it's nice. Applitools did that. They went, hey, we use this a lot, we want to do things. So Selenium IDE now is a web extension. And one of the nice things is that means it has support for Chrome and Firefox out of the box. And it looks like this. Exactly like the old Selenium IDE, because jumping onto a new product doesn't, or a new version of a product, shouldn't mean that your entire world gets turned upside down and upset. One of the nice things it has is it's got control flow and backup element selectors. So you've got while, if statements. You can do loops. You can do all sorts of fun things, which you could never really do very well in the original IDE. And the backup element selectors are really nice. So when it records a test, it doesn't just record one selector for an element. It records like 5 of them. And then when you run the test, if it can't find the element with the first locator, it doesn't abort the test. It goes, hang on a second, I'll try the backup one. If that doesn't work, it tries the next backup one. And only if all the backup locators fail does it go, soz, can't find it, and aborts a test. And that's a really useful capability. It's like, oh, why didn't we implement that before? And it's designed for extensibility. Right now, it's got a nice plugin API, so you can extend the capabilities of IDE, and it's got debugging support, which is always useful, right? So you can pause a test, you can go hunting around and things. And very soon, which is what we're waiting for, it's got code export. So you'll be able to record a test in Selenium IDE and export it as Java, or C#, or Python, or Ruby, or JavaScript. Probably Java first. That's because most people seem to use that. Code export is the big feature that we're waiting for, and it's going to be super. What does the IDE look like when you record a test? Looks like it's off the screen. There it is. So we're going to record a new test. I don't know, what are we going to call this project? Selenium IDE webinar. All right. One day I'll learn how to click. Base URL. I don't know, where are we going to start the test from? Google.com. Start recording. Ah, look, here's Google. Move that over there. Because half of Google is rubbish. get the notification that Selenium IDE is recording. I'm going to do a simple test. What do we always do? We search for cheese. Cheese is always a lovely thing. Click the Google search button. Dun, 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 dun. And then what we're going to do, cheese.wikipedia. And I will scroll the page in a second. You get this context menu, and you can say, hey, look, assert that this is present. And that will record your test. And then you can stop recording. What are we going to call it? Probably the classic Google search. Okay. Can't remember whether we play it back. We probably do. There we go. We'll edit the test. Oh no, that's a terrible locator. Everyone knows it's name Q, right? Again, it's name Q. You can see the backups though that it's got. And so we've said, of your backups, use this one first. Tidy up the test a bit. Set text. Oof. Is there a better name for that? Huh? There is. I'm going to use XPath for once. Never use XPath. There we go. And then we can run it back. Da, 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 da. There it is. So you don't need to leave the IDE to do a record playback. You can just do it. The Selenium IDE can hook into the Selenium server, and so you can then run your tests on Internet Explorer or Edge or Safari or whatever it is that makes you happy. Selenium IDE, that's nice. You've seen the improvements that we're getting in the WebDriver APIs. The final piece is the modernized Selenium grid. Let me take you back in time. The Selenium farm, written by Google, was the first attempt to run Selenium tests in a distributed fashion. The Selenium farm was actually a series of rooms located around buildings on the Google campus, and occasionally the cleaners would unplug one of the rooms to hoover the room, and we would lose an entire cluster of our capacity. That's a true story. They talked about it, and Philippe Herengo came up and he wrote the original Selenium grid. And it was amazing, but it had one slight drawback, which it was Selenium RC only. And RC was going away because, well, we were going to introduce a WebDriver protocol and we were going to run both of those at the same time. So Francois Reynard, who at the time worked for eBay, wrote Selenium Grid 2. And it was fantastic. It supported RC, it supported WebDriver. It was designed in an era where, machines were big and powerful, and there were a few problems with it. The first problem, 2011, which is when it was released, it's a long time ago. Like, my boy is 7. We released Selenium Grid before he was born. Like, it's shocking. There are human beings who I can have cogent conversations with that are younger than Selenium Grid. I can't have a cogent conversation with Selenium Grid. And the modern world has changed, right? Whereas before we would use VMware and massive servers, and if you had 20 machines, you had a massive grid. That was huge. We live in the age of AWS and GCP and Azure, where you can have as many machines as you could imagine, and then a few more. And the way you manage that is use Docker and Kubernetes and other buzzwords that make the DevOps meetups get very excited. And Selenium Grid 2 didn't really cope with it very well. And then Zalando came along and they went, hang on a second, we can extend Selenium Grid and we can sort of spanner in some support for this. And so there's Selenium, which is excellent, and it offers Docker and Kubernetes support, offers a nicer UI. And it's like, yeah, this is great. I mean, it's a little bit clunky, but it's great. And then it's like, well, since we're doing like the Selenium 3 release, we should have a look. And then there was one more problem, and that's the Selenium codebase. So Francois had written Selenium Grid on his own, and then we'd taken his code and we'd merged it into the main project. So if you take a look at the Selenium 3 tree, there are actually 2 projects living in the same jar, and we do a switch. as you begin, going like, this command line flag has been passed in, then go down this completely different code path and start up this server. Otherwise, this one over here. And so you'd get really interesting bugs where you'd fix it in one place and it would still exist in another, and then you'd fix it there and there'd be a different bug that would appear there. And it wasn't a recipe for happiness. So we decided that the best thing to do was to take a step back, think, reuse as much of our existing code as we could, and release Selenium 4, Grid 4. We're going from 2 to 4 because we can't count. And it looks a little bit like this. Conceptually, all these things have existed in both the implementations, but now we're reifying them, which is a fancy computer science word for making it real. There's a router. So the router sits on the edge, and it handles any of your requests. If I'd drawn the internet, the line would be here. Everything here is in a safe zone. Everything out here is assumed to be filled with Russian bots and things like that. It's awful. So there's a router, which is responsible for taking a request and making sure it goes to the right place. There's a distributor. Distributor knows about nodes. Nodes are where the Selenium sessions are actually running. So you could have, this would be a Docker container, for example, or Gecko driver, or something like that. And then it starts a session and puts it in the session map. So what happens is you get the incoming request, and the incoming request goes to the distributor. Distributor picks a node. In this example, we only have one. And then that returns a session. Distributor shoves that session in the session map. And then it returns a reply to the router. The reply goes back to the user. The user goes, okay, now I've got my instance of Selenium. I want to, I don't know, search Google for cheese. So the request comes in. The router goes, hang on a second, this is for a session that should exist. Goes to the session map, figures out, oh yeah, hang on, I know where this is, talks to the node directly, which does its stuff, and comes back out again. Now, the nice thing with this is that you can scale these horizontally, and you can scale these horizontally. You can put this onto something like, a database or something that scales really nicely and vertically. If you do a little bit of caching here, actually the load on this is pretty low, and that means the only time you need to hit this is when you start a new session. And in the world of Selenium, starting a new session is actually a pretty infrequent event. So what we have here is we have a system that we can scale horizontally and run really nicely. And that's one of the lessons we've taken from looking at what other people are doing and all the complaints we've had about Selenium. So when you run it in standalone mode, what we do is we put all of this into one process, right? And let's see if I can show you what that looks like. Hello. Boom. So, does that work? No, it might. There's a button. I feel like one of those trained monkeys. Button? Oh, look, there's a button.
Yeah, there is also another button here.
I found it. Hopefully, if there's feedback, I will kill things. So, standalone, what does that look like? Can you read that at the back? Okay, so what I'm going to do, java -jar, selenium.jar, run it. It gives you proper help. It goes like, what can you do? We are going to run this in standalone mode. Wish me luck. This is pre-alpha software. This is the new stack. It's working. And to prove to you that it is working, I will get my mouse cursor back. I will mirror my displays. I will... Come on. Where are you? There you are. Put you back on. Come on. No. Thank you. Boom. Into there. Into there. Come on. You can do this. No? No? Okay.
bloody software. This is still in display mode. Pull that down. Okay, here we have the classic test where we fire something up, we go to google.com, and away we go. So I run it, go over here, you can see it starting up Firefox. Firefox appears for a femtosecond, disappears. The test ran. Curl. And if we run curl, maybe I don't do it like that.
You can see here the status of the server. Dun, 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 dun. There are interesting things, like it says it's ready, Selenium Grid is ready, and then it tells you the nodes. And the only node it has is itself. So that's running in standalone mode, which you've all seen before. Like I just showed you software that you've already had working. The other way that we do it is with hub and nodes. Have you all started up Selenium Grid like that? Shall I skip the demo? I mean, trust me, it works. But then the new feature that we get with 4 is the ability to run it in a distributed way. So I will exit and I will run that.
Because that is exciting. I mean, it's not really exciting. I mean, it depends on who you are. I find it exciting. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to fire up the session map. So this is the thing that just stores the mapping of session ID to where on earth in the world is this session running. We're then going to start the distributor. And we're going to tell it where the session map is. That's good. And I guess we need a router, right? And we're going to tell the router where the distributor and the session map is. Boom. If we now run this, you will see Selenium Grid is not ready. Why isn't it ready? It's had months to get ready. Hang on. I need to add a node. So we're going to add a node. And we're telling it to detect the drivers. So we're saying, hey, look, on the local system, figure out where the nodes is. We'll tell it where the distributor is so it can register. You will see all sorts of interesting logging output. And now we can say, hey, look, and suddenly the grid has the node. And you will see that the URL it's running on is not 4444, but 555. So it's running in a separate process. So all these things are now separate. We can then rerun our test for fun and hopefully profit. There's Firefox. There it is, failing to get to the page. And it crashed because Firefox gets grumpy if it doesn't load a URL. But, hey, look, everything worked. Like all the pieces clearly meshed because we had that up and running. And because that didn't fail, because that didn't pass, if I do this now, you will see that the status actually contains a list of all the running sessions. So what happens is it goes, hang on a second, it goes to the distributor, what nodes are you aware of? And then it goes to each of the nodes and goes, can you tell me about yourself, please? And so you get like the best information you can. This is going to allow us to do a really nice UI for Selenium 4. Boom, bam. Final feature, observability. It was mentioned before, it is a DevOps buzzword. Basically means structured logging, and you can report test runs using distributed tracing. So why the major version bump? It's because we've got a new IDE. Although we've got the same user-facing APIs, they're stable. We're adopting the new WebDriver protocol, and there's some new shiny things in there that we'd like to introduce you to. And most importantly, we have a brand new grid, which is going to be a lot of fun to use. Thank you very much for your patience. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Simon. Any questions? I think, yes, there is one here.
You can ask me about anything. Within reason, right? I might say no.
Okay.
And ideally Selenium related, but do I think BDD is a good idea? how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Hi, Simon.
Hello.
My name is Yannis Papadakis. First, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay. Basically, I have two questions. I don't know. I don't want to get your time too much, but
I mean, I'm here to answer these questions.
Okay.
Literally, that is why I'm here.
Right. Okay. First, from my experience, I would like to ask about the Selenium grid.
Yeah.
And the difficult part, if you have a setup of nodes that have predefined some capabilities, and how difficult it is to extend these capabilities, meaning that in the past, you could choose some of the desired capabilities API to identify the node. Is this API extendable in a way that you can define your own? Because a lot of issues came up that you had an environment that you want to distribute your test on it, but you couldn't identify based on the known desired capabilities API.
So, just to get this straight, all of the nodes couldn't see all of the test environments. Only a subset of the nodes could see the test environments.
Meaning, you didn't want to just distribute blindly to nodes, but specify specifically something of a characteristic of the node. I mean, based on the desired capability. So, for example, I want to choose a Mac platform. So you choose this capability, but I want to choose a Mac with this and this and this. So I want to extend my API, if it is something that can be extended, right?
So the way it works right now is it's based on the concept of a stereotype. So a stereotype is like, here is the minimal set of things that completely define what I am looking for. It doesn't have it yet. There will be configuration files. So in your case, where it's like this node should run Firefox tests on Mac, but for this version of Firefox only, kind of that level of, What you would do is in the config file, you'd say browser name Firefox version 73, platform Mac. And then when it registers, it will go, hang on, I've got this. And then when your test comes in, you request those capabilities, and it will do a match, and it will do the best match it can find. Now, there is nothing at the moment that says, if you have like 3 nodes that all have like Firefox on Windows, Firefox on Linux, Firefox on Mac, something comes along and says, give me Firefox. Like, it doesn't know which one to pick, right? So it will pick the node that is most likely used at the moment and use that. So it's possible that all your Mac sessions will have gone by the time you come to them, but like, it's a hard problem to solve. But you will be able to configure it to go, here's a specific set of things I'm looking for. The other thing that people sometimes want is to do capability translation. So they go like, I want to look for, Source Labs do this, right? Where they go, the browser name is Firefox on Windows 10. And it goes, hang on a second, I know what this is. And at the end, it's clearly sending to Firefox, and selecting the Windows node and doing all sorts of funny things. That isn't currently supported, but it's pre-alpha. What will probably happen is we will ship with a minimal subset and add capabilities as we go along. So that kind of rewriting stuff is not going to be in the initial release, but might be in a later one. If you know Java, and that's really important to you, github.com, Selenium HQ, Selenium, pull requests, really appreciated. At every Selenium conference, I do a talk, a full-day workshop called Fix a Bug, Become a Committer, where we walk through everything to do with how to build Selenium, how to fix a bug, how to become a committer. Come along to that. TLDR, hop onto our Slack channel, or IRC, yay! Ask for help. Somebody will guide you in the right direction if you are interested in contributing. Does that answer your second question, by the way?
Yeah. Yes. Pretty much. Thank you. Anybody else, or should I ask the second one?
There's a gentleman down here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought I had answered your second question.
Oh, yeah. The second, it's a little silly, but
okay.
But you may find it interesting. But you said about the locator strategy, which is very interesting. I know about the by selectors. We also do extend this by selector sometimes if you want to to use jQuery or
Yep.
another JavaScript,
Yep.
Sysl.js, whatever. So you want to, and we are building this structure of jQuery selectors that sometimes works on Chrome, not on Firefox. We are trying to figure out how is this going to be working. And I know that you don't support this, right?
Yep.
I knew that.
So it should be a really short answer. What you're struggling towards is probably just doing proper unit testing of the underlying JavaScript that you're executing. Because ultimately you're calling execute script and you're returning either a list of elements or a single element, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, don't do it all in Selenium.
Yeah, it's like we don't use Selenium, right?
Yeah.
We use JavaScript.
That's fine.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Like,
but when you're building all the locator strategy based on that, you are very coupled, right?
yeah.
How you can migrate or whatever. If Selenium 4 is come out, we'll see these selectors. And,
Well, Selenium 4 will come out. You'll be able to, the user-facing API is stable. You'll be able to continue using your existing APIs. Like all the hard work you've done won't disappear overnight because slavish support for backward compatibility. Like I'm a bit of a nerd like that. But if you're super tied to one particular implementation, like that's one of the reasons why we're doing the friendly locators, because you know your underlying framework may change from Angular to React, right? And then if you've tied yourself to the JavaScript underlying everything, you are completely screwed in the nicest possible way, meaning you've got full-time employment for at least a week. And that's one of the reasons. But yeah, you'll still be able to execute JavaScript.
Okay.
Okay, cool. There was a gentleman down here. Who's got the microphone? Tell you what, shall I pass this microphone to somebody else to run around with, and I'll just stand behind the lectern and use the microphone there? And then, or shall we just, like, somebody at the back, get ready to ask a question after just come all the way down here, go backwards and forwards. It'll be hilarious.
So
She can't hear
questions?
us.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
My name is John. So I want to ask two questions. So first one is that before some years, Selenium IDE was another pattern for creating a large test suite, right? And people complain about fragile test and all of this kind of stuff. I want to ask if the community tried to enforce to turn back to Selenium IDE with the backup locators and all of the stuff that you're doing. And what do you think that will happen with, you referred to different JavaScript frameworks like Angular or React that renders to the DOM like crazy, you know, and this makes end-to-end testing difficult. This maybe the idea solves the problem or make it worse. And the second question is if you have any plans to the community to have the Selenium IDE to Appium for recording to the mobile.
Okay, so before I begin answering, Selenium community is everyone who uses Selenium. So I'm not going to answer for everyone because I'm an arrogant soul, but not that arrogant. So the first question, if I can paraphrase and just make sure I understood, was does Selenium IDE make it easier to record, to have stable tests on top of Angular and React, which have these highly dynamic UIs with generated IDs, things like that? Probably not. I mean, heavens above. Angular actually has hooks for making it easier to write tests, and for Angular, it makes more sense to use WebDriver. Like, there is a question about the usage of IDE, which is like, hey, should I write 10,000 tests in IDE? If you want to, you can. But it will be really hard to maintain. Like, we're adding capabilities. Like, the IDE developers are super enthusiastic, and they're adding capabilities to make it easier to modularize your tests. So they have the ability to, like, take an existing test and rerun that as part of a larger suite, and in the middle of another test run, right? So you could do, like, the BDD, set up some behaviors beforehand, and then away you go. but it's easier to do programming in a programming language. Just as a rule of thumb. It's ASCII and it's terrible, but also it's great. So for me, Selenium IDE is a sort of tool for either people who aren't confident writing code, or if you want to just quickly throw together a skeleton of tests to go like, oh, I've landed on this project, I need to write some tests. And then you do your initial test run using IDE, and then you export it, and then you build the abstractions on top of that. Screenplay pattern, page object, whatever it is that makes you happy. Just huge wads of text moving down the screen. Doesn't matter, really. You know, would I base my entire testing strategy on IDE? Probably not. But having said that, there was a talk at Selenium Conf a few years ago where somebody was running 1 million Selenium IDE tests a day. Like some people do, they put a huge amount of weight on this tool and it works for them, which I'm happy about because, I mean, it's lovely that somebody is finding it so useful, but I personally wouldn't be doing it. I think I've just meandered completely away from your question. First one, I think I answered. Second one was...
about the plans of Selenium IDE on Appium.
Oh, Selenium IDE on Appium. Yeah, mobile is a really interesting thing. Appium does mobile. IDE is a web extension, and so it can't really run very well on the mobile devices. And Appium has a nice recorder of its own. So I would probably use the Appium recorder for recording Appium tests. It's not the answer you were hoping for, but it is the answer.
Thank you.
Right down here at the front. Oh no. Be gentle.
Who is it?
Hi, thanks for the talk.
Thank you very much.
Did I understand correctly that you're working for Deliveroo right now?
I was, yes.
You was, sorry. I was wondering how many tests or checks or that are written in Selenium does Deliveroo have?
So Selenium, you know when you have a well-balanced diet, right? You're allowed fat and alcohol, but you really should have like carbohydrates and then basic fiber down at the bottom, right? And you've got that sort of food pyramid. Well, we have the testing pyramid, right? And so like Selenium is like fat and alcohol. It's delicious and amazing, and you really shouldn't have much of it. At Deliveroo, we had no Selenium tests on the critical path. And that's because what we did is we were working on a concept which we called technical risk mitigation, TRIM for short. We did away with traditional QA. Because what we wanted to do is, hey, new buzzword that everyone knows, continuous delivery, right? Like if you go back to early 2000s, waterfall delivery was really popular, right? Like that was the way you wrote software. And that gave you like 18 months, 2 years for a software release. That gave you loads of time to put people into a process. It was amazing. Hundreds of people writing thousands and thousands of sheets of paper with their carefully thought out test plans that you were talking about before. And then we realized that 2 years to release a piece of software was too slow. And the Agile methodologies came along. And one of the key things that the Agile methodologies allowed us to do was to release more quickly. Nowadays, a 2-week sprint with push into production at the end of it is not unusual, right? And that meant, oh, holy crap, like how are you going to do 2 years worth of testing in 2 weeks? Like there was less time to do manual testing. So what we did is we saw the rise of automated testing. Tools like JUnit, Selenium, you name it, right? All the bits and pieces that are out there, the database testing tools, the integration testing tools. And what they allowed us to do is they allowed us to take some of the drudgery, some of the boring, repetitive, error-prone, dull work, put it onto a machine, and then the small amount of time we had for people could be spent on exploratory testing or, you know, if you were in a company that didn't know what it was doing, maintaining your test suites. Whatever it is. Problem is that we now have moved to continuous delivery. Like every time someone checks in to master, and everyone's doing trunk-based development, so that happens all the time, you push to production after a minimal set of test runs that will give you complete confidence that the thing is working. So at Deliveroo, we were pushing 30 times a day. There was no time to put a human being into that process. So what we did is we took a step back and went, why are we doing testing? We're doing testing so we don't look like arseholes in public. Right? When your software falls over in front of someone, in front of a user, you look incompetent and you look bad. Right? Like I worked at a bank and they were like, oh, we don't use two-phase commits. It's cheaper for us to fix this in the back office. If like there's a problem with the transaction, we'll just get someone to do it, and it happens sufficiently infrequently, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, they had one strategy. So they did away with a whole bunch of complexity from their system. But we are doing testing so we don't make mistakes in public. It's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. The other thing we want to be able to do is to recover quickly when a mistake happens. We want to be able to identify the source of that problem and fix it. That's why observability is coming to the fore. We don't have time to test every single possible combination before we push to production. We do, however, have alerting, we have monitoring, we do have the ability to react really swiftly when something goes wrong. And so observability gives us that ability to do things. So the role of technical risk mitigation was to take a look at the entire software development lifecycle, identify moments where we were increasing risk, figure out ways of mitigating it. Like, you can't get rid of risk at all. How dull would life be if it wasn't exciting to push? I mean, I'd like it, it would be nice, but it would be dull. Like, if you knew that everything was perfectly safe, you'd never release anything, right? Perfect is the enemy of done. And so what we would do is we go, okay, there's risk here, there's risk here, there's risk here. And then we'd have a conversation with the various teams going like, you know what, there is risk here, how would you like to address it? You could address it using an automated means. You could address it by putting in an alert. You could address it by, you know, waiting for the inevitable leak of data or something to go wrong, and then we'll just fix it afterward because maybe that's the cheapest way of doing it. And then we would put in that. So I was working on the trim team, and that's why we didn't have Selenium tests, because we decided that actually, for the balance of risk that we had, it wasn't worth the cost of paying for Selenium tests. But we did have an extensive suite of unit tests. So there we go. Yeah, but Selenium, like if you've got thousands of Selenium tests and you're proud of that, probably living on like hamburgers and high-fat food with lots of salt in, right? Get that test suite down to as slim as possible. Never test an unhappy path with Selenium, right? Because that's a pain in the backside. Happy path, make sure it's solid, push. Put Selenium at the top of your testing pyramid, or at the top of your testing ice cream cone. To paraphrase someone. There was a follow-up, wasn't there?
No, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Time for one more question.
One more question, and I'll try and keep the answer short. Anyone? I'm going to be around this evening as well, so if you don't want to ask questions in front of everyone, you can just come and find me and hurl abuse in my direction. Say thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, we are near the end of this night. We have a couple more talks from our sponsors and a couple more works from us, the organizers. So I'm going to ask Yorgos from Uni Systems to join us up on the stage and tell us a couple of words.
Hello from my side. My name is George Keratiotis. Now waiting for the slides. I'm a test manager of the software test department at Uni Systems. I will say just a few words about what we do, the type of projects that we are working on, and of course the uses of automation on our work. Okay, just move to this one. Apart from the national projects we are working on, we have a lot of focus on projects from the European Union. As you can see from this slide, there are almost 180 plus projects across all the European Union. These are European organizations that have regulatory operation. They pretty much have IT systems that enforce specific legislation on the business that they are working on. Just a few examples of these projects. For example, chemical substances, usage of chemical substances in Europe, or usage of in clinical trials, or usage of operations in the financial market, or even cases of energy regulation. All these organizations use IT systems that have to make sure that across the whole European Union the legislation is followed. And they have very strict rules in their operations, very strict milestones, and this pushes a lot of effort and focus on the company to deliver the projects on time, on budget, and of course with quality. When I say quality, just to give you some general rules, they always think about systems that have 0 bugs. Of course, this is something very difficult, especially for people who are working on the software testing community. But unfortunately, these are the type of requirements we have on this project, and this is very difficult for, of course, the software development to meet this constraint, and also from the software testing team to make sure that they identify all bugs before the systems go into production to meet these requirements. In terms of architectures, they work with the regulation, they span different business areas, and from technology point of view, they are mostly Java-based systems, but also SharePoint and .NET. That's the, let's say, the 3 most common technologies for implementation of these systems. As I mentioned before, very strict timelines and, of course, quality targets. Regarding the software testing team, in order to meet these requirements, we work a lot with ISTQB. I assume that lots of you are aware of the methodology and the relevant, let's say, philosophy regarding testing. All testers are certified. We work with processes which are defined by customer needs. So every different project has its own processes. There's a strong focus on business requirements, as I mentioned before. In all these European organizations, there are totally different business areas that we are trying to address. And the work from the testers starts, as probably you are also aware, from identifying and understanding the business surrounding and becoming very, very familiar with the relevant requirements in order to prepare the right test cases. And of course, we work very close with the customer on all phases of the test activities. Simon mentioned, of course, the agile implementation. We want to demonstrate as quickly as possible the very first phases of the project development so that customers understand about our progress. And we keep close collaboration with them until the very final delivery, which is seeing the system on their production and actually seeing this and being used by not only the members of the European organization, but in most of the cases, these systems are being used by everyone in the European Union. So we are addressing a really important market. Automation. I don't want to say a lot, but a big, big thank you to Simon and all the contributors of Selenium, because we can use automation to reduce the amount of manual work. Of course, not having thousands of test cases. We use flavors, of course, of Selenium, like Protractor, plus other tools like HPQTP and SOAP UI for different purposes. On some projects, we even have very hard targets, like achieving 100% automation on all of the test cases. Of course, not all of them with Selenium, but usually with a mixture of tools so that we optimize as much as possible our work. That's it from my side. I think the last one is probably you also have seen it before, but that's the dream job of a tester, to have everything running with automation and just monitoring the execution, make sure that we do a few adaptations to continue working on them. So thank you very much, and also I would like to have a big thank you to the organizers for this excellent event tonight.
Thank you, Giorgo. It was also okay. Since there are a number of other meetup organizers around here, I would like to point out to them that Uni Systems is a very nice company to collaborate with. They were the first ones where we just sent them, you know what, we want to have pizzas or coffee or whatever your budget can cover. And the next day they had fixed everything and just tell us, okay, everything's done. So keep it in mind. Okay. I'd like now to ask Michalis from OpenBet to tell us a couple of words.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad to see you here today. Seems we are becoming more and more. Even my cousin is here with his beloved wife. So tell me, have you ever been in a situation where you really want to test something and you don't really know how to approach it, or what kind of tools to pick up, or how decisions are made? Or have you ever been in a situation where you find something really, really good and you want to share it with other people so as to not have hard times again and again? Well, what I'm going to talk about today is what we do in SG Digital for testing, what are the challenges we have, and how we approach things so as to trigger interesting interaction with, among ourselves. I'm Michalis Mavromatis, and along with more than 20 dudes around the globe, we are building front-end systems for betting applications. And believe me, it's really hard to think how quality fits in there. And it's not only that we want to put something there for our, which is called quality, and put it there in our life cycle process. But believe me, it's the effort that test engineers and software engineers are putting there together so as to decrease the stress. Believe me, when you have to deliver and deploy something to so many systems, then this can become stressful. And talking to the guys, I found some ways that are really clever and intelligent, and I would like to share with you. First of all, what we do, we build games. We build games for players who love betting, for players all over the world. We have development teams all over the world. And one of the biggest development centers that continually keeps growing is in Athens. And guess what? We have at least 60 test engineers. So the problem, one of the biggest problems is, how do you test a game? And it's not only a matter of lots of data or different sizes of devices and different things, but also is a matter how do you test that something is user-friendly? How do you test that this works? And there are even more. We have to support also big events. And by big events, we mean cases where we have to support more than 20 million transactions per day. So as you can see, it's becoming challenging. It's not a question if we automate or not. We know that we have to automate. But as you realize, we have different applications, front-end, back-end databases, third-party. So if you think about it, it's hard. And on top of that, there are needs to test code quality or performance. And again, how do we organize this? I mean, the really hard questions are remaining the same. Have I tested enough? When I can start testing? So what we do, actually, as simple as that. We automate wherever possible. Apart from unit test, recently we have put some ghost tests, which are really fast tests that are running against our infrastructure. We also use Java, Ruby, Cucumber, Selenium, WebDriver IO, and Browser Stack. And as we speak, we are running a proof of concept with Puppeteer. What we are trying actually to do is to create some integration and regression test suites that are wired in our CI/CD pipeline. And thanks to Ministry of Testing, we had today Simon and Beren, and they talked about these wonderful things. And and actually, this gives a really big value to us. And hopefully, we can add more value to this event by perhaps at some point in the future, talk to you about these wonderful things. From a strategic point of view, we are trying to go to a feature-complete coverage. What is really important is to bring test engineers and software engineers together so as to test, to be able to test as close to development as possible. So, for example, we are trying to mock, we are trying to parallelize, and what also we are trying to do is we are heavily using BDD so as to all work together with some common goals. We also actively monitoring new tools and usages. We have a concept of tech radar. We have different roles. So, for example, we have test engineers, test leads. We also have architects. We are looking also for test performance lead. And we trying to continuously remove silos. So, for example, we have software engineers, test engineers, and product owners working together. Besides, we all know that requirements will never be enough. Yeah, I'm not expecting to become immortal after this presentation, but at least I'm expecting to have some interesting discussions with you while drinking cocktails. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michaeli. Okay, for our last talk from our last sponsor today, I'm going to ask Marietta from Atos to join us on the stage.
Thank you, Yorgo. Big thanks to the whole Ministry of Testing team for making this happen. Big thanks from my side to Beren and Simon for their inspirational walkthroughs. Representing Atos, we are feeling really proud and excited for being here today, learning and probably noting down some experiments to try out tomorrow as soon as we get back to work. So I know that all of you are hungry and you are waiting for pizza, so it's just a couple of minutes away, during which I will talk about a craft. And I hope that most of you will agree with me that testing is a craft. And it's something easy to talk about, but the challenge is to advance on it. And it has to do, it doesn't have to do with the role or the responsibility we have in a team. It's about talking critically about a system. It's about quality. It's about a different kind of testing, system stability, performance, automation testing as part of the regression of the continuous integration, exploratory tests. And for people in Atos, this craft is part of our culture, especially when we are talking about delivering projects and products, nice, which are mission critical, such as next generation emergency services, the IT support for the Olympic Games as part of Atos major events, unified communications and collaboration tools. And we are constantly honing this craft. improving our quality standards through the Atos Digital Experts community, a global community within Atos with experts in the testing domain, creating synergies, pairing up on testing activities through different departments and products, and through trainings which help us and give value to what we do by applying new practices, concepts, and technology. But most importantly, we are here today in order to support Ministry of Testing, to connect with all of you, to learn and pay forward what we learn. And building a community is hard, but sharing knowledge and experiences with people which have similar goals with us is really exciting. And Atos supports it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last couple of words from me. You will all have the chance to talk with Beren, with Simon, with all our awesome sponsors later tonight. Know that the party, the pizzas, the cocktails, everything is on the top floor. There are 3 ways to get to the top floor. The first one is the elevator that is straight out the door. It goes straight up to the 8th floor. Next is the stairs for very athletic types. Right, yeah, nobody's gonna take them, yeah. The other one is the 2 elevators that are on the other side of the stairs. These go up to the 7th floor and you just walk 1 floor. Okay, try not to wait everybody for the elevator that goes to the 8th floor because you're gonna wait a lot of time. Okay, calling up Petros for the last few notes.
Before we wrap this up and head to Roof Garden for beers, pizza and cocktails, I would like to invite all the volunteers on stage so everyone can give a big public thank you to them. Volunteers. Everyone. Are you ready? So thank you guys. Thank you very much. Let's go for